Welcome to Aurora Institute's webinar on designing engaging, purposeful, rigorous tasks for remote and in-person learning. I am so pleased to be joined by our esteemed panel of colleagues today. We have Antonia Rudenstein and Laurie Gagnon from Redesign, and Jessica Salcido and Deborah Park from Circulos High School. If you can go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. My name is Natalie Slocum. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Director here at Aurora Institute, and I will be helping to moderate today's session, which is part of our all fall series of symposium sessions that we're hosting, that we began hosting back in August and running through November on key issues facing the field. So if you haven't done so already, we invite you to please introduce yourself using the chat box. We'd love to know who you are, where you're tuning in from today, maybe a hope that you have for this school year. And we also welcome you to share your own reflections and experiences in the chat box as well. We encourage a really rich dialogue and would love to learn from you. Today's webinar will be recorded and archived on our website, so you'll be able to refer back to today's conversation and the slide deck as well, if you would like to. And we also invite you to share what you're learning on Twitter. We're using hashtag Aurora2020 today, and you can always mention us at aurorainstitute.org. So with that, I am so pleased to now turn it over to Antonia to get us started today. Antonia, it's all you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Oh yeah, people are starting to say who you are and where you're from. That's great. We want to start just by getting to know each other a little bit. And if you could, after you sort of put in your name, your location, your role, it would be great if you could answer one question for us, which is, what's a question that you have about designing engaging, purposeful, rigorous tasks for remote and in-person learning? That just rolls right off the tongue. So what brings you here? What will feel like a good outcome? What question do you have that you really hope you could get some insight into, either from people participating or from those of us who are facilitating? Just take a second, think through a question. And then we will get started. Blending sync and async activities. Okay, cool. That's a great one. Very hard. We're working on it. We're gonna do it. Any other? All right, Karen, good to have you here. Okay, I'm going to put this question in the chat, and then I think hopefully people will continue to share a little bit. And in the meantime, we will get started. All right, so we know people are in different places. Some of you are in schools, some of you are at home, some of you are walking to daycare to pick up your kids or doing your laundry. Whatever you need to do at this hour of the day, just take care of it. We are happy to include anyone who's in your circle and around you into this session. And we're just excited for people to be here and to have made the time. All right. Circulos team, would you like to give us a little, who are you?
Yes, we'll go ahead and begin. Hi, my name is Jessica Salcido, and I am the school leader and founding designer for Circulos. So just a little bit of context about our school. It's located in Santa Ana, California. We're an urban school district and we're the 6th largest in the state, where over 80% of our students are English learners and almost 90% participate in the free and reduced lunch program. Circulos is one of a network of 19 super schools across the nation with a vision to rethink high school. So we're happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Park, and I'm the curator of projects and partnerships at Circulos. I'm a teacher, but I currently serve as a program specialist, bridging teachers and community partners together to create authentic learning experiences for our students.
You guys have met Antonia. I'm Laura Gagno, and I also work at Redesign as an educational designer and partnering with schools and designing learning experiences for kids, and also creating ways for kids to design their own learning experiences. So we're excited to dig in with you and learn from you as well.
Yeah. We have another member of the Circulos team with us today who was able to join us at the last minute. Brian, do you want to just give a shout out and advance who you are?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Glad to be a part of the discussion today. I am Brian Davis. I'm the curator of talent. I work with Jessica and Deborah pretty closely. So it's a great environment. It's a great team. So like I said, happy to be here today. So thank you.
All right. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our agenda, and then we're going to jump right into exploring. So we're going to begin with the Circulos team talking a little bit about their approach to project design. Their entire school is project-based, so they're deep in this work. And they are using as their kind of foundational guide a research-based learning cycle that Redesign has created. And so they'll talk about their approach, and then Lori will spend a little bit of time talking through kind of the research and practice behind this learning cycle that we use and that is in play in Circulos. Then we'll do a kind of really quick run sprint through 4, hopefully we'll have time for 4 projects. We're just going to give you a little tight insight of each of them just to give you an idea of how the learning cycle works inside of different kinds of projects that are structured in different ways. And then we'll take some time for questions. And that should bring us to about 3 o'clock. And then we have an optional breakout rooms from 3 to 3:30, where I will work with anybody who's interested in creating a frame for a learning experience. Lori will work with people in imagining a project frame, and the Circulos team is going to take people through a remote experience of being a learner in a learning experience. So you'll be able to choose which group to join, and we will close at 3:30. We're excited to have you. All right. So Circulos, take us away.
All right, so we'll just begin by giving you a little bit about our core innovations at our school. And sort of, what our foundational elements are. So as mentioned earlier, Circulos is very small. It's an innovative high school located in Santa Ana, and our vision is to really rethink high school. So we're all about connections and teaching students to create connections to themselves, their learning, and the community in order to impact the world around them. And so that's what a lot of our projects and our learning is centered on. The way that we do that is through our 4 core innovations. So the first one is our small learning communities. We maintain a really small student to teacher ratios in our classes, and where every student is assigned a mentor teacher and then a mentor circle of students that they meet with 3 times per week. These small classes and the mentor circles, they really are there. They're the enablers to make sure that every student is seen and heard every single day, and that they have the opportunity to cultivate their voices, which is just something that we're really, really focused on at Circulos. The second core innovation is flexible learning environments. So we create flexibility within our schedule to allow for students supports, interventions, enrichment, and for students to learn at different paces, and then also for them to explore their passions. So we leave certain time windows, we call one of them community week, within our schedule. So we're very flexible with that, and we create our schedules around students and their needs. Our third core innovation is we coined it P²BL, so project, time, place based learning, where we take this the magic ingredients is like what we like to call it, of community partners, teachers, course content, mixing that, and power of place, and mixing that together to create projects and learning experiences that are connected to students' lives, their community, and their world. So we feel like that's the magic that creates this authentic, real world, engaging learning. When you take all those and you swish them together. So our fourth core innovation is competency-based learning. So at Circulos, we have 12 competencies that we believe that all students need to have by the time they graduate. Our competencies are transferable across disciplines, and they're developed over the 4 years the students are with us. They're within all of the learning experiences and all of the projects that students are experiencing. So those are our 4 core innovations. And what we'd like to do now is just talk to you a little bit about how we put together our projects at Circulos. So there's some things, some key elements that after having worked with redesign, they really helped us move into that next level where we have across our school, we have some elements that are a part of every learning project that the students do. So one of them is that all projects go through the Circulos learning cycle. And then all projects are created with the same template. So this is across our school, and each project within that template has common elements. So some of those common elements that must be in there, right, when the teachers are curating these projects are how it connects to the community and our partners. So we do have place-based when we're in school, and right now it's virtual. So Deborah will talk a little bit more about that. It's really exciting. We still have them coming, and it's sometimes a little bit easier, especially if they're across the country. And so the other thing we have is that's just really important to us is that each project, making sure that it connects to students' lived experience in their culture. We also, in all of our projects, integrate the competencies across all disciplines and have clear learning targets in there. And then all of our projects, this is something that we are really working on with redesign right now with our coaching, is maximizing the opportunities for students to cultivate their voice every single day. And then each one ultimately ends in a performance task. So some of the systems that support this, our common elements are that we have project production time built into our day for teachers. So that includes 3 hours per week of professional learning time, where teachers are creating and they're designing their projects. We also have our feedback cycles. So we have where teachers and students are going through a RIGOR relevancy and agency checklist rubric and giving feedbacks on projects. So that's something that, these are some systems that we've created to move our projects through, and they do these systems throughout the project design creation process so that we can level up is what we like to call it, and make them the best that they can possibly be. We also, one of the really important elements that we've had support from redesign, which makes sure that the momentum continues to move forward and that there's ample support. The teachers need support as they're creating, to ask questions, to run things by people, to get feedback. And so, so these are some things, some ways that we actually get through having our projects completed and packaged nicely for students and teachers to choose from. And Deborah's going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our vision when it comes to, when we get all of this nice and packaged, what is the vision ultimately that we want to see with these projects in our school?
Right. So this is the packaging that you see. This is our Canvas dashboard of the current projects that are happening during this season 2 time period at our school currently. And so as teachers design their screenplays and go through all of the different things to align with the competencies and with the interdisciplinary content, we really want them to design for the user experience on Canvas. So I noticed there was a question or something in the chat about the transfer of paper to online. So as teachers design, we do gallery walks, we share all our courses with each other, we provide workshopping time for teachers. So we really encourage teachers to design with like a creative lens. The aesthetic appeal, the engaging like intentionality of the user experience for the student is really important at our school. And so that's what our Canvas dashboard looks like. And as we create the screenplay, just as Jessica mentioned with the analogy with you know, the entertainment industry, we call it episodes. And so in each of our screenplays, students have different episodes or learning experiences that they go through the learning cycle. And to even further the analogy, we actually created a Netflix dashboard. If you can move to the next slide, where we kind of increase student engagement, motivation, and just an intrinsic motivation to like want to find out what that next show or the next season is. And so we had like our original release premiered after our community week. We premiered it a couple weeks ago. So these are the different projects that students are working on. And really what we're thinking about as we continue to grow this repository is to create so many amazing learning experiences and project units that over time in the next couple of years, students will then be able to personalize their learning and pick which project seasons that they'd like to do to fulfill their learning and their competencies. And so this way they can even do their own pacings, just like you would marathon your favorite show on Netflix. We want students, if they're really interested in the elements among us, they could like just go through and complete the whole season unit if they wish. And so this is kind of how we build our curriculum, and hopefully after revision and feedback and making these projects better year after year, we'll be able to share them with other schools as well. And so there's another image of just some more project seasons.
So the idea is for kids to say, we can't wait for another season. Oh, when's the next season gonna start? And we've actually had students after our Ash and Feather say that. So that's exciting.
All right, so that, you know, Deborah and Jessica have mentioned the research-based learning cycle that is underlying the project structures. I'm just going to talk a little bit about that background. And this is based on the learning sciences. And so it's weaving in a bunch of different elements. And I think one of the big, you know, things that we want to offer as, you know, ways to connect how you do this and or to take away something to expand is how are we making the learning pathway both aligned to what we know about how we learn, right? About how we build schema and expand our knowledge and connect to our own experiences and our own ideas about the world, and how do we build that out and share in a way that then learners can own it and know where they're at in the learning process. And I think that that's, you know, a key piece here that to take away is like, how are you doing that for your learners? And this wasn't designed for, you know, the current moment we find ourselves in with a lot more virtual and independent asynchronous learning than we normally would. But it is designed to cut across all of those modalities. And so, you know, we're obviously bringing much more attention to what it looks like in remote and hybrid situations right now. But the idea of knowing, like, I need to connect on what do I already know? How am I making meaning of what I'm about to do and why? And then how do I investigate, you know, my questions? How do I investigate and learn more about the skills that I need and actually develop those skills? And then what do I do to create and apply my learning? And how am I going to share that to an authentic audience? And then along the way in that inner circle, there's that ongoing reflection and synthesis. So this is really driven by inquiry and trying to put the process in the student's hands. And one of the things when we dig into the exemplars that I think that we're trying to not every project is going to do everything every time. So how are you creating your own culture and feel, and how does that sort of different projects offer something different, and that together, right, that's creating a whole experience. And it isn't for the teachers or the school to decide every part of that, but in fact, it's creating some spaces for kids to ask their own questions, to make their own choices about how they learn and what they create and how they share it. But that it is always tied back to what are those learning goals? How are we building competency? And whether you're using, whatever word you're using for what it is that kids are learning. So we'll use competency-based a lot, but that's just whatever those transferable higher order learning targets are. Some of them are academic skills, some of them are dispositional or social emotional skills. But we're going to really be clear about what that evidence looks like, and so that kids know what the destination is, and we can then support them in unpacking that. So all of that is baked into the learning cycle, and we kind of break it down often into these two, to the outer circle and the inner circle. Outer circle is sort of a project or a unit. And there's, again, lots of different configurations of how this can be. But you can think of like kicking off, what is this about and what am I learning? In the cases that the Circulos team has just shared, right, there's a project frame, right? You're invited into a topic and with a provoking question. But then students also bring their own questions in as they engage in inquiry. And you can also imagine all of these kind of having a spectrum where there really could be a much more open-ended, where the student is asking questions and then designing a project around it. So there's different ways that this can play out. And so this is the outer circle, and this can happen though, it can happen over the course of a season or a quarter, or it could happen over the course of a week, or even sometimes a few hours, that you can go through this cycle. But by kind of knowing the steps, then the learner kind of gets some control and also some awareness about what is it that I am aiming for in terms of competency. What do I know about myself in terms of my own learning style, and how am I going to exercise my agency? And so it's developing those metacognitive processes, both tied to the academic skills, but also to the process of learning itself and knowing who I am as a learner. And then the inner circle is like a gear or a spirograph, if you had one of those as a kid. And it's always turning around on the inside. And in any kind of moment or learning experience or lesson, we think of this as an ongoing cycle. How am I making meaning, not just of my overarching project question, but the skill or concept or strategy that I am working on in service of that larger project? How do I kind of get down to that? And so we can actually meet students where they are in terms of their skills and their learning strategies and their concept development, and then move that forward in service of a larger purpose in the project. And then, how do we really make sure that there's time to synthesize and say, how does this build or challenge my schema, so that kids are both expanding what they know and having it reflect who they are, right, in a culturally responsive way, in community with their teachers and fellow students, and also where sometimes is the curriculum offering mirrors into a new world or challenging ideas that they need to accommodate, and thinking about this process as a give and take, but it's really rooted and centered in the student. We've got some steps in the design process of that you can come back to, and you'll hear some of these and you'll see some of these pieces. There's a topic, a question, and then thinking about what's the context. And again, this is a place where sometimes it's defined, right? And we might say, and this is, I think, something to think about, especially I saw some people talking about balancing synchronous and asynchronous time, and how do you go from like a paper or an in-person model to something that is online. Not everything needs to be completely open-ended at once. You're actually teaching kids the way, how do they actually develop agency and exercise that. So you're not going to want to have everything be open-ended all the time necessarily, unless your learners really are like self-driven and creating their own pathways. So you can think of like, is there a context? How safe is our water? Is there something happening that gives you that context? And we're going to then create a similar product so that we learn, you know, what does a policy report look like? And we're going to explore that genre. What does a literary analysis look like? And where does that come up in the real world, right? In poetry or literary magazines. So you might actually have a focused product, or you might have that be open-ended. But it isn't that everything needs to be choice in the hands of students, but that over time, right, they're learning the genre, they're then able to make choices, and they'll know, right, they'll have those skills in order to then think about what is the best product, the best way to present for my audience. But even by having more curated examples, then kids are actually learning how to do that, right? So you're trying to gradually release them into their own inquiry, their own, and developing a kind of critical consciousness about the world and what they want their place to be in it. And so, you know, the resources that get curated and how you guide those learning experiences are going to depend on your learners and really knowing where they're at in their process. And then this got mentioned earlier as well, and I think you can explore this. That reminds me, I will drop the link to the slides. So if you want to click into any of the linked documents and projects, but these are some quality criteria that we believe supports the design of projects that provide equitable access to learner-centered environments and to the learning outcomes that we want for all kids. And so this is many of our design process often references back to these. And, you know, there's lots of parallel. You may have your own, you know, there are other ones out there that are also great, and we could crosswalk them. So it doesn't have to be these, but the idea of really knowing what are the criteria that you're aiming to have in your project design, and how are you meeting that in different ways given the learning setting and who your learners are and what they need in the process. All right, we're gonna now dig into these exemplars. And we've got 4. 2 are from Circulus, and you maybe saw Land Ho and Ash and Feather in the Netflix dashboard, which I love. And we also wanted to make sure that there's you know, some different examples from different levels. So we have a K2 project and also an algebra. So that's kind of bridging middle and high school. So the idea that, you know, this can work at all levels. And you know, you need to just think about what is it that my learners need. We don't wait until kids get older to let them do, ask their own questions and pursue their own inquiry, but it looks and feels different when they're in kindergarten than when they're in 11th grade. All right. Okay, I think I am up first. This project, creating our community, the students, this is across levels. It's actually for Westminster Public Schools, which has presented in this webinar series, and also is a competency-based system. And this particular school is an arts school, the Metropolitan Arts Academy. So they wanted to do multi-level projects, and creating our community is meant to be done each year, right, by kindergarten, by level Ks, level 1s, and level 2s. They're moving away from graded. And so within the project, even the same exact project, there's ways to differentiate. So here you can see this project pathway. Maybe you haven't memorized the colors yet of the learning cycle, but you'll see that these milestones in the project actually are aligned to the learning cycle. So make meaning, they're connecting to that purpose. What are our questions about communities? What communities do we belong to? And then they're investigating well, what are specific roles that community members play and where do we find art in our community? And then they take action on that and think about how can we create something and contribute to community art. And then what's interesting here is that in the kindergarteners, they don't do the milestone 4 or 6 usually, right? So as you get to higher levels, then the kids are actually doing an asset map of arts in the community and identifying needs. So it goes a little bit more in depth, and there's extensions. This can happen for the same group of students in the same room, right? Where some kids are ready to go deeper, and that's fine. They should be able to. And some kids are going to stay where they need to. And they're going to really focus in on the core aspects of it. So that's one way that this is differentiated. And then the other way throughout, kids are, reading different texts about community. They are, they're asking their own questions and investigating appropriate to their level, sometimes often also referencing the standards if they need to be tending to grade level specific standards. Those might change, but the project frame is staying the same. So that's just one way that the learning cycle can be flexible. And then a second thing in this particular project is around arts integration. So, this could have variations with STEM or other interdisciplinary work. So specifically for arts integration, it's both about the process and the product. So the students in this one, they will create a mosaic mural about community. So every child will create something. And this is still unfolding. They've done this once. So, but in future directions, right, it could be that the same student in K1 and 2 updates or adds to the mural, right, or changes their mosaic. So that exists. But the bulk of the learning really is happening throughout, and that's just the end product. And that arts process is really key to helping kids connect and be able to express. So it's not just that they're creating art, but it's like through art, they are learning literacy, they are learning sometimes math standards, they're learning social studies, and they're also learning art techniques. So that's just, again, thinking about what are the different flavors that you can bring out within a project. All right.
Oh, Lori, can you refresh or actually?
Yeah,
yeah.
we can go
We're
ahead.
gonna jump over to Ash and Feather.
Oh,
Perfect.
Right. So Ash and Feather is one of the projects that we did this fall. It was one of the things we want to highlight about it, and then Deborah's going to talk about the community partner aspect, was really connecting students to themselves and their community. And so we really believe in having students develop their voices and their identity over time, and things can develop and change, right? As you continue to talk out loud and you hear other people's perspectives, and then you connect your perspective to theirs and theirs to the community. And so you'll see our what is it called? Oh my goodness. Our icon. What do we call it's our logo? Yes, there we go. That's just my mind. I don't know how that happened, but you'll see our logo is a circle, but with connections going through. And so we really believe in the student develops who they are by kind of listening and making those connections to themselves and the community. And so this is a really big deal for us, and having students speak and be heard every single day. So this project was a humanities project where, in an English class, normally you're going to write a personal narrative, right? And you're going to learn how to do that. But with this, we had students within that explore expressing their stories, and we talked a lot about making the invisible visible. Through spoken word, poetry, and dance. And so throughout the season, students work to learn to express themes from their personal narratives through dance, photography, and they did that with community partners, which Deborah's going to talk about. And we believe that this is, like we said before, this is the perfect melding of the content, the community, and the student, right? And you put those together and it just creates magic. And so in the end, students, the tasks that students were going to showcase were their personal narrative essay, which we called a chapter of their memoir, which was going to be is going to be published in an anthology in partnership with I believe it's the Wellbeing Studio, and an art piece was the second piece, a self-portrait, a photograph or a work of art that reflects who they are, and then a creative performance. So dance, movement, or spoken word. And these were things that they learned alongside how to express their stories alongside the community partners, which Deborah's going to go ahead and talk about right now. So we were able to really bring all of those pieces together through this project. And this was the project where the kids were saying, we can't wait for season 2. So that was exciting. Go ahead, Deb.
All right, so what made this project really special was that we worked closely with our community partners from beginning to end. And what I mean by beginning to end is that they were actually planning and co-constructing the screenplay with the teacher, with myself, in the summer, like in July, even before the school year began, and they were part of the entire exhibition and the debrief as well. Not only were they integral in constructing the curriculum and designing those learning experiences, but they were also co-teachers in the course. There were some times when there would be about 5 adults in the Zoom room teaching students in different breakout rooms. So they were in our Zoom rooms at least once or twice a week, and spending a lot of time building relationships with our students, creating a really great atmosphere for students to feel comfortable to express themselves through literary, artistic works, and also through dance and movement. And so our community partners, our main community partner was Dr. Sharon Francis, who's a professor at Chapman University, but she also created a nonprofit called Wellbeing Studio, and they are the author of a podcast, which is called Ash and Feather. And this was kind of one of our foundational literary works that we used for our unit to build literacy and reading and analysis. And she also taught art workshops on self-portraiture and photography. We also worked with a choreographer who works in the entertainment industry in Atlanta, Georgia. And I know Jessica mentioned this earlier, but with the whole transition to remote learning, we realized that the opportunities for community partnerships actually increased, as we no longer had to be limited to like transportation and staying within the Orange County, LA city limits. So we were able to connect with Ali, who was in our Zoom classrooms every Thursday, Friday, teaching students how to dance, teaching students how to share their story and be comfortable with who they are. And then we also were able to work with Freestyle Love Supreme, which is an improv comedy group that they do workshops on like hip hop culture and history and storytelling and beatboxing. And it was such an amazing opportunity to connect students with people who work in Broadway, with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who were able to join in our Zoom sessions and work with our students all the way here in Santa Ana. So we had some amazing community partners that made this project really successful.
And I'd like to just do a shameless plug. So if you'd like to see a little overview, a video of the students participating in those reflections with the community partners and doing a debrief and dancing, we're going to show a video if you come to our breakout. So
We cannot compete with that.
I just thought I'd say it.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to talk about another project that is currently being piloted at Circulos, just started a couple of weeks ago. And it's a project that we are designing in partnership with Circulos. And so I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and give a couple of high-level ideas about it. So one of the reasons why the partnership between Redesign and Circulos is so powerful is that in a lot of ways we are committed to similar things. So we are committed, Redesign is our own learner-centered community framework, which has 3 pieces. It's about competency, and we define that as helping students get really good at things that the community has decided is important. So it's not our community, it's not our competencies, it's the communities. connectedness, so building connections to community outside of the school walls and within the school walls is critical for lots of different reasons. And then critical consciousness. So being able to analyze the world we live in with a critical eye, both for the positives and the strengths and the things that need to change. And these are things that are very central to the whole design of Circulos, but also to the work that we do at Redesign. And so in Land Ho, we're bringing all these together. It's a study that's organized around the essential question of what makes a city livable. And they are studying their own city, Santa Ana, which has a really interesting, very complex history, long history. And the investigation is exploring like social, political, economic, all the different influences that have come together to make it one of the most diverse and also most dense in terms of population. It's the fourth densest city in the country. And then we're connecting out to the community, to experts, to city planners. It just so happens that this project is happening at a time when city planners are literally in a deep study of how to reuse empty pieces of land within the city to make it more livable. We didn't know that at the time that we designed this project, but we are incredibly excited to have this synergy happening. Lori, can you jump to the next slide? All right. So I want to take another second. So a couple people asked, so how does this work in a hybrid situation or a remote situation? Everything right now in Santa Ana is remote. They have one of the highest rates of COVID in Orange County. And so they're piloting all of this project in a remote context. And one of the things we've done, so they're using Canvas and we're building the project in Canvas. So we are writing directly to students. They're our audience. And so the project is not written to teachers, although there's teacher tips and a teacher guide, but everything we are crafting is directly for students. And I've just got here on the screen, one of the things we're doing throughout the learning experiences that we're designing. So we launch material, teachers launch material with students can read material on their own. There's a lot of different ways that students can interact. We've tried to use video a lot as a way for students to be able to kind of process things on their own when they're at home. And then we've built into every learning experience what we're calling choice moments. And these are moments where we are explicitly giving students choice about how they might proceed. And there's different kinds of choices. So the first one you see here is choice about what avenue will I choose to learn about my neighborhood. They're walking around, they're interviewing people, they're taking photos, they choose what works for them. And they could even put forth a different idea. So this is literally get out into your community, put your mask on and go for a walk. Or do an interview with somebody, it could be through Zoom, it could be somebody on the other side of the city, it could be somebody in your house, it could be a neighbor down the road. You could meet outside 6 feet apart. However you want to do this, you have the opportunity to figure out like remote, in-person, whichever. And then the second kind of choice moment is, how would you like to undertake this work? So we've talked about the fact that connectedness and community are central to Circulos as they are to Redesign. And so what we've built into every learning experience is opportunities for students to choose to work together or independently. So often teachers, we make those decisions for young people. A remote context actually gives tons more freedom and flexibility around this. And we are taking a real advantage of it. So I don't know if you can see what is written here, but the students have a choice to listen to interviews and look at images on their own if they want. They could work with a partner, they could look on their own and then undertake the activity with a partner, so mix of solo or partnered. And then the final choice is, I'll listen and look, but I need to work or I want to work in a small group directly with the teacher. So students can really decide what level of scaffolding support do they need, what kind of mood are they in? I'm grumpy, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm going to do this by myself versus I've got my best friend here and we're going to do this together. My brother's in the class next door, we're going to do it together. So choice moments at the heart of this project all the way through, lots of different kinds. All right. And my breakout group will talk a little bit about how you build this into your classroom. Oh, and the last one. So I'm going to do very brief overview of this. This is a little math investigation for algebra. What we found in a lot of math classrooms is that a big project that covers a lot of community issues and can often make math the hand servant of another content area. And if you really want to try and keep math central and really work on math skills, that can sometimes be very frustrating for math teachers and not that helpful to young people. So we've built these little, what we call investigations. They usually take from 1 to 3 hours instead of, 3 to 6 weeks. And they do take a real world scenario. So here we are, it's COVID, newspapers are going out of business left and right, local news in particular. We've built a little investigation and it's a real world scenario. It's an authentic application. And then Lori, can you slide us forward? And then what they're going to do here is figure out how to break even if they were going to publish a local newsletter and they needed a certain number of subscriptions and they wanted to, local news is dying. We want to pick up that baton, and we're going to use math habits of mind, which are really how mathematicians think. We're going to develop a competency around reasoning quantitatively. And we're going to try and figure out like what it would take, in a simulation. This is not a full-blown project, to actually play with the ideas of fixed costs, revenue, profit, breaking even, and to explore those using these particular strategies and competency skills. So there's different ways to get to real world and authentic. Now, if Circulus were to do this and they wanted to build it to connected to the community, they could always talk with people in the news industry. They could talk with people, the banking industry. They could talk with finance people and really try and build out some of the real world applications of this, or they could really stick much more closely to the hardcore math. So I'll just give you a quick overview. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we've put 3 resources here, and the portfolio piece has a lot of different projects in it. So you can feel free to just jump in there and explore, less as a way to kind of do a plug for redesign and more to just give you ideas about kind of the range of possible ways to think about designing projects that could fit in a remote, hybrid, or in-person situation. So so questions, takeaways, and they can be questions for any one of us or for all of us. You can unmute and just get into conversation with us, or just put things in the chat. Go Circulus. Anything you're wondering about? I know that was like the fastest sprint through a lot of complexity. So if you want to hear more about any project, please feel free.
I just kind of have a takeaway, if I could share really quick, is kind of like I'm working with Jessica and Deborah at Circulus, obviously, and when we first kind of started this work, it did seem very overwhelming and working with templates we hadn't seen, and but just believing in those core values as once you get started and start tackling it, all of a sudden we have one project, and just before you know it, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes so like just kind of like getting a start and then having the guidance, especially shout out to Redesign for like kind of walking us through so that process and just like that relationship we have together and the commitment to what we believe in, like over time, all of a sudden, like, okay, we have some some momentum now. So it's just like kind of diving in and just remembering what you believe in definitely helps the process.
Oh yeah, we can share the competencies. Absolutely. Let me grab.
If you send a
Will you
link.
see if they're linked, Lori, in that slide? I think they might be linked. If you go back to the math. Slide 27.
There we go. Are they linked? Yep, they're linked in
Yep,
there.
they are linked.
This
So,
is the inner workings.
Yeah, so we worked with Circulose on this. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Jessica? And just share kind of, they're in the early stages, I would say, of implementation. This is not a full-blown rollout yet, but maybe just share, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you developed these and like why these seemed like the right ones for you.
Yeah. Well, we worked really close in the beginning when I first got here. I just remember believing in the idea that there were things that across all, no matter what, right? Students would need to know before they left us, right? And these would be the things that we would want to make sure that we were doing across all of our classes. And so to me, so when we talk about, there goes my light. When we talk about, a lot, when we talk about siloing, it takes away the connection between everything. And so since Circulus is so deeply embedded in connect, like that is what we are about, is connecting things that could seemingly be disconnected, right? And so just looking at competencies and saying a math class could really be thinking historically or examining the past. An English class could be reasoning quantitatively. And so what does this mean, right, for us as a school, and how are we really making these things relevant? And I just remember believing in that so much, and then not understanding so much about competencies. And then as we're going, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense to me. Having these 12 things that we can say as a school that we do across all of our classes. And so, in the beginning, it was just, what do we believe in? What's important to us, right? Building community, cultivating voice has been since the beginning something that I'm so passionate about. Like, that is why I lead this school. That's the whole reason, is cultivating the voice for a student, giving them those opportunities to lead and speak and learn who they are. We had a question one time with our teachers about when they got the opportunity to do that. And almost every single one of them said it was in college, was the first time they were ever asked a question, or the first time they ever started to reflect and think about who they were. And so we want to give that opportunity. And so these things really anchor our learning, and they say, this is what we care about. And so we're going to learn our content through these competencies, right? And so, so we're in that stage right now where we're really just learning about it, where we decided what we cared about, and then now we have our set of competencies, and we're in a place right now where we're focusing on two. We're focusing on building community and cultivating voice so that teachers can get used to the levels, right? We have levels and we have skills within each one, and so it's just understanding what those are, and we have them integrate those into the projects so that we can start to see them. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is just understanding, the skills and the levels within each. What does that look like for a student to be level 2? And then how do we integrate our content with these, right? So that's a big one, right? So I saw in the chat somewhere, is like math teachers, and I was a math teacher for, this is like 17 years, right? At a high school over here across the street. And I totally understand. It's like so scary. Like, I have to cover all this stuff, like I got to cover this. And so how do I how do I cover this, but also do these competencies? And what we're trying to help teachers understand is that it's through the competencies that they're going to be learning this content. And so it's the vehicle, right? And so so that's a really important step, is how do I then take this level, right, and really make it content specific, right? And so how do I take a cultivate voice and make that content specific and make sure that my students are learning the content that I want them to learn, but through cultivating their voice or whatever thing that they're looking at. So that's where we're at right now, and it's just really exciting. Some of our teachers are just, you know, when we do our 3 hours, you know, on Wednesdays, they're just writing away like they got it. And then some teachers are in different places, but that's where I would emphasize with this kind of thing, it's process. Like, it's just, we're so about process. Like, it's okay for us to be where we are, and that's all right. And we move through a process. And as long as you do that and you take one step in front of the other, you know, one foot in front of the other, you all of a sudden you have this playlist of Netflix projects, right? Like we look at it and we go, how did that happen? Like, what are we, you know? So it's really exciting to see, if you just trust the process, like what Brian was saying, one foot in front of the other, how much you can accomplish with that. So we're in the middle of it, and people are learning and really trying to grapple with it. Because, you know, at the beginning last year, we had math teachers only picking reason quantitatively. Like, that's the only one I can do right in my class. So now we're really working through that. That takes discussion, that takes debate, that takes trust. All of those things that we cultivate, that we want our students to have, we do that with our teachers as well. And I think that's a component that we should always be emphasizing, is how much we have to do it as adults in order because people aren't necessarily used to that in education, being able to use their voices either, right? A teacher, that's why I came to this, because as a teacher, I really wasn't able to speak about what I thought. And so we do that so that then that transfers to kids. So I know that was a long answer, but that's kind of where we're at with the competencies.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple points I'll just amplify based on the other questions I'm seeing. One, just you can start at any size. It doesn't have to be that you're going everything is projects. But I think that the key to think of is, what is the transferable skill? What's the thing that kids are going to take away that they're going to remember when they're 27? And, you know, obviously we want to activate that before they turn 27, right? But so what's the thing this week that we're going to use next week? And how do you help kids start to see that I'm not just doing this to go through the motions and check the box and get the grade, but I'm actually doing it for my learning? And I think that's another piece with the staff, is how do staff start to see themselves as collaborating, even if they're in different disciplines and working on different projects, but they can start to articulate what are those, in this case, right, the competencies that are connecting, so that when they name it and reference it, kids realize this is what we're working on. And it's not just I'm working on it to make sure that, Mrs. Park or Mr. Davis want, I'm doing what they want. I'm doing this because I'm building my ability to prepare for the discussion or whatever the skill is. And then the other piece I'll just name in terms of, and Antonia answered this partly, but starting out with student agency, just offer some of the smallest choices. I think one of the big things in this current, when you have kids in front of you, it's easy to kind of see where they're at and you see some of the evidence of their learning. But we're realizing, right, there's much more distance, right, between us and students. So how are they producing evidence of learning? Not just evidence of doing some work, but evidence of learning. And I think that reflective journals can be a way, right, to give kids choice to think about as they reflect, how did you approach this task? What worked? What didn't? And next time, what choice do you want to make, right? So very small ways that you can get kids to generate some reflective thought, and then use that to make a better choice in their learning in the next instant. So just these small places that become like habits and routines, I think can be very, very powerful. I don't know if any other final chiming in there.
Can I add that the competency, something that I connected, it was like last year when I was looking at self-efficacy and things like that, is that competency transparency with what is it for a child? If I can look at something and I can say, this is where I'm at and this is how I get there, it supports student agency, right? So anything where a student can say, this is, and I found this, I can't emphasize this enough. I just find that it's so helpful for students. Transparency, where am I at? What do I need to do to master this? And what do I need to do to get to where I want to be, right? And so that really just supports student agency so much. So even a little step, it doesn't have to be competencies. It could just be very clear, transparent, directions, or where am I at? And I've seen that with students, just they feel so empowered when they know, when it's not ambiguous what they're trying to learn and what they're trying to do. So competencies really support that, in my opinion, when I'm looking at this is my continuum. So
I will just throw in my own 2 cents about the competencies, which is that the competencies that we've been developing with Circulos, the state of South Carolina, and other clients along the way are a little bit different than many of the competency sets that we see these days. And that is that these are pegged not so much to the standards and much more to what does the research show that students need to be really good at to be successful in post-secondary life and in their communities. And so we have a competency called building networks, because one of the key things we know about how people get jobs is through networks. And so if 80 to 90% of jobs are gotten through a network and our students are not able to build a network for themselves and sustain it, then it doesn't matter how competent they are in many other things, finding a job and getting a job will be elusive to them. We have competencies in leading teams, because the research shows that not just teamwork and collaboration, but actually leading teams is a highly desirable skill in college, in careers, in daily life, family life, etc. So we have begun to build competencies. The other piece about the competencies is that it's our firm belief that we live in an interdisciplinary world, and that the major problems that we all face are interdisciplinary. And so the competencies we design in the world these days need to be what we would call transdisciplinary. So reasoning quantitatively is not just a math thing, right? It's computer science, it's epidemiology, it's all different, it's land use. You need to be able to use numbers in many different ways in many different circumstances. The same thing for cultivating voice. You can cultivate your voice in a poem, in an essay, in a novel, but also in a presentation, in a piece of music, in a piece of art. There's many different ways to express who we are and what we believe and what we want to communicate out in the world. So we're looking for competencies that are a way of thinking, that if you get really great at the ways of thinking, you are well equipped to be able to do many, many different kinds of things in real time, in the real world. So, and the Circulos competencies really do reflect that, and they reflect their community values, not just the school's values, but the values of the people who send their children to Circulos. So on that note, if you could, we're going to break into breakout rooms for anybody who is excited to do that.
Yeah, so we're gonna switch. That's a beautiful note. We'll pause and transition to logistics. So we have 3 breakouts. These are like meant to be kind of an extension add-on to dig in a little bit deeper. Feedback through students' eyes with the Circulos team. And then Antonia mentioned she'll be leading one on outlining a learning experience. So kind of focused at that smaller level of like the lesson or learning experience, that inner circle. And I'll lead one that is about how to rapidly kind of prototype and brainstorm an overarching project frame. So that's like the outer circle of the learning cycle. And please do fill out the survey. Either way, if you're staying, that's wonderful. And we'll drop the link again. And then I think everybody knows, but just doesn't hurt to remind us that there's still some webinars left. And the next one, I think this is the next one, is in a few days. And looking at tech standards to support learners. Natalie, is there anything you want to add there?
Oh, thank you. So before we break into breakout rooms, I just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining, and thank you for such a beautiful presentation today. I did drop the link to the survey in the chat, so if you could just take 1 minute, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. And we hope to see you all in breakout rooms shortly.
And then
I'm putting in the chat the links.
yeah,
For those of you who, so usually there's a breakout room that gets created inside of a project. I mean, inside of a webinar. We are doing, we're gonna have you link out because it takes too long to sort people into internal breakout rooms. So to do that, you're gonna need to leave this room if you're leaving. If you're staying with Circulos, stay here. If you're leaving, you're gonna have to grab the link that you need here and actually exit this call. We're not coming back here. And then pop into the breakout room. That's the one that you're looking for. So we'll see you in a minute.
All right. So Brian, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start. Thank you guys for staying, Christian, Stephanie, Natalie. We are gonna go ahead and start with an overview video of the Ash and Feather project that we highlighted, and Deborah's gonna say a little bit about it before we go ahead and do that.
Sure. So this video is just an overview of our season called Ash and Feather Stories Inside Out. And it's basically a snapshot of students as they presented in the exhibition, their dancing, their artwork. And we also have moments from our debrief circle that we did the day after with our community partners. And so Brian's going to show us the slideshow soon.
I'm coming. All right. This should play it. Here we go. Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
It's actually showing your desktop.
Oh. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go.
Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head.
I am the light that lights the way. I wonder if darkness could kill light. I hear evil man counting money. I see a bee getting honey. I wonder if a bird could fly without a say words. I am the light that lights the way. I prefer to see the world like a visionary. I feel like I see something to carry. I touch the bench leading up to my ferry. I cry that a forest just hit their toe on the stairs. I wonder if it's a worry that governments wouldn't care. I am the light that lights the way. I understand that we can't do something to fix all our problems. I say we need to do something to solve them. I dream that we could do something great. I hope we could stop killing some random snakes for fun. I am the light that lights the way. I see we need to hit our head and get bumped. That we should have fixed it. That we should have clicked it. And that we should have made it. There to the stare of impossibilities. I guess it's just you and me. But always remember that, okay? I am the light that lights the way.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. Insecurities are habits built by doubt. As a child, I was bubbly and loud. If you were to see a picture of me smiling, you could almost hear it. A child free from worries, excited for each day. That is until I look in the mirror for too long. I begin to notice every little imperfection from head to toe. Everything seems so out of place. Constantly looking at a scale to determine what I wear. Constantly practicing a smile so others won't ask what's wrong as if they care. Constantly trying to make my parents proud only to be told try harder. Constantly laughing at any insult in the form of a joke by my so-called friends. People don't understand how their words can hurt others. A small joke to you could be someone's deepest insecurity. I'm slowly learning to dance with my insecurities because to me they are like a shadow. They whisper so that only I can hear them. Looking in the mirror first thing in the morning can be the worst at times. I just stare at my blatant face with only sorrow. From under bags that hang like crescent moons, to my shadows whispering I am unloved, to them telling me I could always stand to lose a few pounds, to them telling me I will be forgotten. It doesn't matter at times, because at the end of the day they'll always be there. Sometimes they scream, sometimes they whisper, but it's not like I can get rid of them, even if I wanted to.
A new idea. All right. What did you gain? What did you learn?
Understanding other people's story makes you feel like you're not alone. So it's just like a little boost of empowerment.
He wrote it in chat. Based on his experience with this season, I will be more understanding of others.
I have a few I'm going to consolidate. So it feels normal to be in class on screen and to spend time having fun together in class. There's so many ways to express your story and never be ashamed of what you do.
Thank you, Sharon and Allie, for those fun activities you gave us. Dancing was weird at first, but then you get more used to it. The art project was also really fun and gave us a lot of things to do to draw our portraits. Since I like drawing, I had so many ideas. Overall, it was a fun time, and thank you for sticking with us.
Like she said, you are so important and so worthy, and your stories have really changed me too. I feel more confident because of being with you.
And it's just so moving to hear your stories, and I'm just so happy to hear that moving kind of got you guys more confident and your art got you more confident in writing.
I was very moved about your story. You really don't meet that much people that use the story as a form of helping others, and you honestly made me change who I am. I was not doing well. As a person that has depression, anxiety like you, we're two different people, but we're not that different.
All right. So we hope you enjoyed that. That was just an overview. We had our exhibition where our student got to choose what they wanted to exhibit from their learning. It could have been dance, it could have been their poem, it could have been a vignette. So then they got to choose that, but then they also did a debrief, because we really feel, and Brian brought this up earlier, we really feel like one of the most important pieces of the learning cycle is the reflection piece. And so when we do that, that's where we feel like the learning happens. We've experienced it ourselves as adults. If we don't give that space, if we don't close that loop, we really are missing an integral part of the cycle of learning. And so the next day, even though the exhibition was over, we met again, and they did a reflection with the partners. And like Deborah said also earlier, it's a non-hierarchical way. We're all learning together from each other. No one knows the perfect way to do things. And so what they see is they see me learning, they see the community partners learning, they're themselves. And so it's just a great place to connect and learn with each other. And so that's kind of what you saw. It's just like their process. They were, different things they were doing throughout the season of time together. And it was just really powerful to hear their reflections at the end. So I don't know if either Deborah or Brian, if either of you want to kind of give a little bit more, and then I'll move into sort of like how we've had students give us feedback on things. Did you have anything to add there?
I think you covered it.
Okay, yeah, I do. Usually this is all the words I say.
I would just add that it's just something, sometimes reflection or moments of reflection to discuss like the learning and the process itself is often neglected. So it's one of those things that I feel you have to be intentional about scheduling to make sure it happens, because it's so easy to kind of move on to the next thing, but perhaps you're missing the most important part of it all if you don't really schedule and be intentional about making time to reflect. So that's all I would add, Jessica.
Yeah, I want to just add on to that. It's actually part of the episode. So when you look at you'll be given a link soon in a couple slides of our screenplay that is basically the backbone of this whole project unit. But that reflection part, the fine debrief, is embedded in one of our episodes. So it's like an important learning experience. It's like it's not an afterthought, it's part of the learning experience.
Yeah, and we actually intentionally do that with our teachers as well. So usually you think I got to cover, we go through the same thing. I got to cover this, we got to do this learning. But we work backwards from the debrief so that we intentionally have the time in there. So we go 30 minutes for this no matter what, and then move back so that we can make sure that piece is in there. Because if we don't hear those voices and we don't process that information, it's not gonna be there. So then the teachers have said thank you for that, because they do that with the kids as well. So what we're going to do, we said that this was going to be a through the students' eyes, sort of a giving feedback. Deborah, I don't know if you want to kind of go ahead and explain how we work with the kids to give us feedback on our projects, and then you guys can actually kind of take a look at that and pretend you're the kids if we have time.
Yeah, so feedback is really important to us, as Jessica just mentioned, and we actually built it into the creating process, the screenwriting process of our screenplays this summer. We actually called upon 4 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so 4 students who represent each grade level. We asked them during their summer vacation if they can volunteer to sit as panelists and kind of evaluate our work. And that was really fun, because Brian kind of joked around saying, like, usually teachers grade students, but we're really having our students grade our work. And that's kind of the same philosophy for how we design our Canvas course and everything we do, because we're really building for the like a user-facing experience. We want it to be an engaging experience that students will love. So oftentimes when you're writing something, maybe you're not thinking in the perspective of like a 14-year-old. And so we really wanted to get their voices. And so Brian and I trained 4 students the day before our feedback circle, and we had them get acquainted with the RRA checklist, which is a rubric for rigor, relevancy, and agency. So students really understood what each of those categories were about. And then we also gave them access to 6 screenplays that they would be providing feedback on using a protocol the following day. And this was a really eye-opening experience, because they would say things like they would want more. One of the things that we learned was that students wanted choice to work alone and not just work in groups. And we completely thought the opposite. We as teachers think that kids always want to work in partner groups or in small groups, but that's one of the changes that the students requested. They also had really unique perspectives about like how we incorporate dance into the units, and they just had really great feedback that we were able to use and then change, because we see teachers as learners as well. We're all learners, including the leadership, the teachers, the students. We're all equal in that there's no hierarchy, because we truly are a circle of learners. And so that was a great opportunity for us to continue that idea of feedback and revision.
Yeah. And students will be very honest with you. They'll tell you that's boring, which is great, because sorry, my light keeps going off, which is great because you know, they'll just say it how it is. And so that's really the best part too, because it's different coming from a kid to a teacher that, you know, than for me, right? If I say, hey, you know, but this needs to be more interesting, you know, I have to think of ways to say it. The kids just say what they say it right. So so that's really really helpful to have the kids be a part of that. So if we could go to the next piece. So this is what we have done, right? So we use feedback circles all the time. Every Wednesday when we do our PDs, our teachers engage in feedback with one another on their project. And it really is a way to just level it up. It's like people just start processing and engaging and looking and thinking, and then they start, oh, you know, I do need to add that. Oh, you know what, my title isn't very exciting, is it? Right. So they're just leveling up each time to create this beautiful package that they can then work with kids on. So we're going to go ahead and dig a little tiny bit. We don't have too much time, but dig a little tiny bit into this. If we could go to the next slide, I'll kind of explain to you. So I was going to give you guys about 2 minutes to review the RRA checklist. So go ahead and go over that link. And the reason you're going to review it is because we were going to have you preview one of our projects, preview the Ash and Feather screenplay. And we call it a screenplay because it's literally everything in there that you would need to know if you were a teacher doing that project. We'll have you preview the Ash and Feather screenplay using the RRA checklist as your reference. So first, let's go ahead and do 2 minutes of just looking over the RRA checklist, looking over what is relevance, what is rigor, and what is agency. And I'll give you guys 2 minutes for that. And then we'll go ahead and talk about how we're going to have you give us some feedback here. Oh, someone said they can't click on the links. Is that our links or was that Will? Susan? Is that for these? Are these links not?
So does everyone have a copy of the slide deck?
No, I'm sorry. This is Susan Ulrey. No, I don't have a copy of it, but I can get it and do the links later.
Okay.
I just dropped the first link in the chat box because I have it on my end. So
okay.
Oh, thank you.
That RRA checklist link is now in the chat, and I can drop the other two in there too.
Thank you.
Sure.
So what I'm hoping is that everybody has the RRA checklist in front of them. They're able to see it. And then what we'd like for everybody to do is look at the preview, the Ash and Feather. So we're going to have that link as well. So Natalie just dropped that in. So you'll have the RRA checklist and then the Ash and Feather. And you could just look at the first, you know, the project overview, how it's related to the community, those things. And what you're going to do is you're going to really see, you're going to take what we would have people do. It looks like we don't have too much time, but what we would have, oh, okay, keep it there. what we would have people do is we would have people jot down notes within each category on rigor, relevance, and agency, and say, what did they notice? What was strong within that category and as it pertains to this project, and what could be strengthened? What would be better? And so this takes, you know, courage. It takes trust in a team, and it's something that we build every single week with our circles, our debriefs, getting to know one another. But so far it's worked really, really well, where people are able to give really good feedback. So we're going to go ahead and ask for you guys to take a look at the Ash and Feather as it relates to the RRA checklist, and take a look at that. We'll maybe just give like 2 minutes to just kind of think about one thing. How about we'll just do this? One thing that you noticed, or that was strong, or that could be strengthened within any of those categories. It could be just one, as far as it relates to Ash and Feather. And then we'll ask for your feedback. So we'll give you, I'll just do 2 minutes. And it's supposed to be much longer than that, but it's a simulation, so. Do a little timer, and we'll ask for each person to have one thing as it relates there. There we go, there's my timer. So normally what people will do, what I've noticed when we do this protocol is people will just start to talk about what they think. So we ask them to refer to the RRA checklist in order to really be diving into what is the quality criteria, what are we actually looking for in a project. And so we say to, to reference that when you're talking about what you noticed and what was strong and what could be strengthened.
And kind of to enhance that, using the language over time, it really starts to kind of develop that culture, like even down to the students. Like, we're not there yet. We're like, our students are talking about all this all the time, but just really using that language with yourself as a staff, like Jessica was saying earlier, has an effect over time, we believe.
Definitely. So with these protocols, holding that space is really important. So, okay, so it looks like we've done 2 minutes, and I know that that wasn't enough time, but if one of you or some of you could share something that you noticed, something that was strong or something that could be strengthened within that project as it relates to the RRA quality criteria. Does anybody have anything to share there? And normally this would be 10 minutes where you guys would give us feedback on that project. So this could be, I'm the teacher and I'm looking for generosity. I always say feedback is a form of generosity, right? Like, it helps me. And so I try to encourage the teachers to really dive in and give that feedback to us. So does anybody have anything that they could share with us?
So hi, I'm Susan Ulrey. And I know I jumped in late here, so I'm trying to do a lot of catch up. But as I'm looking at this, and I work at the Nevada State Department of Education, and so we're really trying, we have a digital learning collaborative where we're trying to shift the instruction here in Nevada. And as I look at this curriculum that you're putting here, if I was a first-year teacher, I would be able to walk in and actually implement this plan. And so that really says a lot. I've been doing this a long time, and curriculum and instruction is my background. And I have been trying to find something like this so that it would help to shift the instruction here in Nevada. I used to teach at a Google high school in Missouri. And so coming here to Nevada, where there wasn't a lot of digital learning, blended learning going on, it's been a lot of trying to get them to shift that instruction. So part of that mindset, of course, is shifting to a PBL method to do that. And something like what I'm seeing, I see that it is strong for looking at it from a teacher lens for a first-year teacher to come in and actually implement. So that I applaud all of you for that. That's really great. I don't have much more feedback than that, because that's the lens that I'm using is, could a teacher implement this? And I'd have to take another close look to provide more feedback than just that. So
I appreciate that so much. Thank you. No, that's really good feedback. I think that that's so helpful. And also, like, it's interesting because we have done a lot of, right, you know how you've done a lot of, you're looking at PBL and all the different places and what are all the criteria and how complex it can be. And I do feel that's why we took this one. This is a redesign, a checklist, but it was like, oh, this is palatable. Like, for me, I can take this. And our teachers have really grabbed onto it too. So definitely that's a really good lens to look at it from, because they're the ones that are going to be doing it. So I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, to add on to that, I just want to say that this was a unique creating experience, because actually the class from the first day of school was taught by a long-term substitute teacher. The teacher had a baby about 2 days before school started. So she's on maternity leave. And so that really helped us understand the importance of the screenplay, that it even works. It works beautifully, even with a teacher who's just coming in as a long-term sub, or it could work with a first-year teacher. So we became like believers of the screenplay after this unit, after this experience.
And even veteran teachers that are really we don't want to say stuck, but they've done this for a long time, and now we're asking them to shift to a digital blended learning environment. And of course, there's fear with that, right? The fear of the unknown. So this would even work for those veteran teachers who need that. We'll just call it that scaffolding approach, that hand-holding approach. It'll definitely work well to have it laid out like this. Now, I didn't click on the link. So what I'm looking for is what is our end project here? And I might have missed that when I came in late, and I apologize.
It's okay. We only gave you like a minute, and it's like a lot of stuff. So it's like we were supposed to take less time, in the beginning, but whatever. I think so. The end so this is Ash and Feather, right? So Deb, did you want to just go real quickly and explain what that is?
The end product was to write a personal narrative that would be a chapter of their memoir. So students actually read a memoir by Trevor Noah. They listened to a podcast, 6 episodes. They read several articles, and then they kind of saw different exemplars, including House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. So it was a very ELA memoir heavy kind of unit, and then the final product was to write something, to write their personal narratives. In the video, we have vignettes and poems because the personal narratives are quite long. They're about like 3 to 5 pages. So we didn't showcase those in the video.
So they learned to express themes from those personal narratives throughout the project with the community partners is really what happened. And so they did an exhibition on that at the end. And then it's going to be kind of published book. Yeah.
So do you present the end product to them? Do you front load it and let them know here's what you're going to be producing? Do you introduce it to them first, front loading it so that they know, and then bring all of this in?
Part of the redesign protocol for launching a project in their cogwheel for launch is to give a overview of exemplars. So we have a tile page where students can, so we had different spoken word performances that we found on YouTube. We had little snippets from different famous people who wrote their memoirs. And then, so we had students go look at different examples, including storytelling through dance, and also portraiture through the National Portrait Gallery. So we front loaded them from the beginning, and then they're really excited because we're like, by the way, you're gonna make something like this. You're gonna have your own exhibition in 6 weeks' time.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much for explaining.
No problem. Thank you. And so our time is out, which is like, oh my goodness. But when you just did that, when you did the what did you notice based off of the RRA checklist with the project, what normally would happen is the team gives feedback for 10 minutes and I don't talk, right? Or the teacher doesn't talk. So, but we kind of broke protocol there, which is, something normally we don't do, and then the person who received feedback would ask clarifying question and reflect on next steps. And then we would have a reflection on the process for the whole team at the end and say, were we brave? Did we feel okay to participate? Did we speak our truths? All of those kinds of things. And so that protocol is linked there as well for you guys. And it works out, it doesn't have to be super formal, but it works out really well because it creates space for people to finish what they're saying and, all of those kinds of things that we are all learning how to do as adults as well. So, so all of those pieces are there. And we find that it makes our projects so much better when we have that space open and we just say, this is what we do at our school, and people actually really appreciate it. So we appreciate you guys coming, and hope that you'll let us know if you need any other links or anything like that. I don't know, Natalie, if there's something else we're going to have all of this up on our website, right? Or on your website.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much. That was such an awesome activity, and I wish I had more time to dive into it, and I will. And my reflection coming out of this is that this structure and protocol can live far beyond teachers and students. I was thinking, how can we use these protocols in my own organization and in meetings that I'm leading? It's very adaptable and flexible in that way, and it's really powerful, and Redesign does such terrific work, and I love to see how you're using it. We are recording this entire webinar, and we'll have the recording and the PowerPoints up on our website within 1 to 2 business days, and we'll send everybody out a link with all of those resources. So you'll be able to refer back to any part of this, and we'll have the links in that PowerPoint too. So you'll have access to all of it. So thank you again. We greatly appreciate you sharing so openly with us, and we hope to see you all soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Susan, it was fun to have a conversation.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Great job too. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take
All right.
care,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.